The Sunday school lesson for November 3rd, 2024 is Jonah Repents. Jonah chapter 2, verses 1 through 10. Welcome, viewers and subscribers to my channel, The Backstory and More. I am Audrey. If you are interested in knowing what happens before each Sunday school lesson, you are at the right place because I will share the backstory, read the lesson text, and offer a brief lesson summary. Last week's lesson, today's lesson, and the next two lessons are taken from the book of Jonah. These studies will provide a better understanding of the man, his motivations, the message of the book, and the miracles contained in it. Jonah's ministry, described in the book that bears his name, is difficult to date. The closest we can get is to recognize that he prophesied about events that occurred during the reign of Jeroboam II, 2 Kings chapter 14, verse 25. That king ruled Israel from 793 to 753 BC. The designation Israel in this context refers to the northern kingdom after the original nation of Israel divided after King Solomon's death in about 930 BC. The southern kingdom became Judah. The book of Jonah is probably the best known of the 12 in the section of the Old Testament designated as the minor prophets. The book of Jonah is different from the other 11 in that most of it is in a narrative. It is therefore easier to read and to understand. The word of the Lord had come to Jonah, and he was commanded to go to the city of Nineveh and preach against it. The reason is given in Jonah chapter 1, verse 2. Its wickedness had come before the Lord. Jonah decided to disobey the Lord's command, and he went west instead of east. He first traveled to Joppa, a city on the coast of the Mediterranean Sea. His plan was to sail in the opposite direction from what God had said. Jonah found a ship that was ready to sail, and it was going to Tarshish. Jonah was trying to do something that was impossible then as it is now: hide from God. About 250 years before the time of Jonah, David had declared the impossibility of such. Psalm 139, verses 7 through 12. Jonah's trip to Joppa from either Samaria or Gath-hepher worried him. He paid his fare, boarded the ship, went down into the ship, and went to sleep. The ship set sail from Joppa, and the Lord sent a mighty storm to intercept it. The sailors reacted in the standard ways for such a situation. They lightened the ship by throwing its wares overboard. Acts 27, verse 18. This storm was more than ordinary, however, and it also caused each man to pray to his God, lowercase g. The master of the ship awakened Jonah so that he could join them in the prayer meeting. Then the sailors said to each other, "Come, let us cast lots to find out who is responsible for this calamity." They cast lots, and the lot fell on Jonah. So they asked him, "Tell us, who is responsible for making all this trouble for us? What kind of work do you do? Where do you come from? What is your country? From what people are you?" He answered, "I am a Hebrew, and I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land." This terrified them, and they asked, "What have you done?" They knew he was running away from the Lord because he had already told them so. The sea was getting rougher and rougher, so they asked him, "What should we do to you to make the sea calm down for us. Pick me up and throw me into the sea, he replied, and it will become calm. I know that it is my fault that this great storm has come upon you. Instead, the men did their best to row back to land, but they could not, for the sea grew even wilder than before. Then they cried out to the Lord, "Please, Lord, do not let us die for taking this man's life. Do not hold us accountable for killing an innocent man, for you, Lord, have done as you pleased." Then they took Jonah and threw him overboard, and the raging sea grew calm. At this, the men greatly feared the Lord, and they offered a sacrifice to the Lord and made vows to him. The backstory ends here, and today's lesson begins with the next frame. Verses 1 through 2. Then Jonah prayed unto the Lord his God out of the fish's belly, and said, I cried by reason of mine affliction unto the Lord, and he heard me. Out of the belly of hell cried I, and thou hearest my voice. Verses 3 through 4. For thou hast cast me into the deep, in the midst of the seas, and the floods compass me about. All thy billows and thy waves passed over me. Then I said, I am cast out of thy sight, yet I will look again toward thy holy temple. Verses 5 through 6. The waters compassed me about, even to the soul. The death closed me round about. The weeds were wrapped about my head. I went down to the bottoms of the mountains. The earth with her bars was about me forever. Yet hast thou brought up my life from corruption, O Lord my God. Verses 7 through 8. When my soul fainteth within me, I remembered the Lord, and my prayer came in unto thee, into thine holy temple. They that observe lying vanities forsake their own mercy. Verses 9 through 10. But I will sacrifice unto thee with the voice of thanksgiving. I will pay that I have vowed. Salvation is of the Lord. And the Lord spake unto the fish, and it vomited out Jonah upon the dry land. A brief summary. The disasters that came upon Jonah as he tried to flee from God and resist his will eventually led him to this point: submission to God. Jonah's prayer of submission draws heavily from the Psalms. In his desperate situation, Jonah turned to the familiar, poetic songs and prayers used by God's people through the ages. Expressions similar to Jonah's cries for deliverance, his words of worship, and his expressions of commitment can be found in Psalms 3 and 8, 11 and 4, 18 and 6, 30 and 3, and also verse 4, 31 and 22, 42 and 7, 50 and 14, 23, Psalm 69, verses 1 through 2, 77 and 11, and verse 12, 86 and 13, 88, verses 3 and 6, 103 and 4, 116 and 14, and 120 and verse 1. Thank you so very much for watching and listening. Join me soon for the next backstory and more. And remember, every Sunday at 1 o'clock Central Standard Time, I release a new video for the upcoming Sunday school lesson. Stay safe and may God bless.